Gary, so you just got back. I want to just turn it right over to you because I know we have a limited amount of time. Where you just were and your experience of it, if you don't mind. And good to see you again, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's good to be here. Everybody's heard about what happened in Kurville, Texas. And this weekend, I was at my lake house, which is in the area, and I just happened to have my helicopter in the backyard. Um, they wouldn't let us fly into Kerrville to help with search and rescue, but the disaster extended about 100 miles. So 15 miles from me, in the city of Marble Falls, Texas, uh, we had a major flood event, and there were people that were lost, and roads were washed out. So Saturday morning, first thing, I joined with some other helicopter pilots and went to Marble Falls, Texas, and we began to do search and rescue for people. I work with an organization called Operation Hilo, operationhilo.org, which organizes private helicopter pilots. And I was with them in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. We had 100 helicopters there, and we were the only link to safety for hundreds of thousands of people. Because North Carolina, much like what happened in Texas just now, the roads and bridges were washed out, and so communities were isolated, and people that needed medical care, dialysis, things like that. The only way for them to get out of there were helicopters. So for a week, 100 volunteer helicopters brought food and water and rescued people and brought them back in, and it's really an amazing thing. So this organization joined me first thing Saturday morning after the floods in this area where I was close to, and we immediately began. There were 6 helicopters. We began to transport National Guard and firefighters and police officers and volunteers, and we flew them to the areas where the water was raging and people had been lost. And it was the only way to get them there because you couldn't drive there. And we also flew the waterways looking for survivors and ultimately looking for bodies. And I even flew the county commissioner who needed to assess how we could do emergency repairs to the roads so that they could get equipment in there. And so for 2 full days, I and other helicopter pilots were the lifeline to these areas. It was I'm going to send you some video that you can show. It was it was terrible, but there were over 100 volunteers that showed up and helicopters and everybody came together to save lives. And I'll share a couple of those stories with you in a minute. But that was kind of the general scene that happened in part of Texas where I was at.
What was the name of the town where you were? Where?
Yeah, it was Marble Falls, Texas, and it's about 70 miles north of Kerrville. And of course, Kerrville was where the massive event happened. And in Kerrville, I'm very familiar with the area. My sister-in-law, who lives down there, had to evacuate. I've been down there many, many times. And when people went to sleep, there were some flood warnings. There's a river there called the Guadalupe, and it runs about 50 miles from Hunt, Texas, down to Canyon Lake, where there's a dam. Well, that river, at 5 o'clock in the morning, uh, uh, went from 3 feet deep to 29 feet deep. A wall of water 20 feet high, washed through the campgrounds. It's 4th of July weekend. Thousands of people in tents and campers staying in cabins right on the water's edge woke up to a wall of water washing through their camp or their tent. And in particular, it hit Camp Mystic, where there were about 75 9 and 10-year-old little girls camping, and many of them were washed away. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy. Most people are familiar with the events by now and what transpired. As of this afternoon, there were 82 reported deaths in Kurville, and 27 were little girls from the camp, uh, and there were still a few missing, and even greater than that, because people were camping there. No one has a record of really who was in the area, so they're gonna be finding people uh, for weeks, and they don't even have an idea of who was missing. So it's a really terrible tragedy. You know, they're talking about it being a once in 100 year flood. I heard today it may be once in 1,000 year flood. That's how bad it was.
When you and I spoke on the phone about it, I want to talk about some of those details for people to understand because in regards to this camp, there were cabins, right? Log cabins that people were sleeping in.
With the camp, that's correct. Camp's been there 100 years.
So these cabins, it's 5 in the morning, so people are waking up, kids are waking up to the water is just, I mean, this might be ignorant for me to say it, but like just breaking through the windows and you can't even run out of the cabin.
Like a tidal wave. And everybody was asleep. And even though there was a flood warning, no one could imagine a tidal wave 20 feet high. And it literally came through the windows and doors and knocked the cabins off their foundations. The cabins were floating down the river with children in them. Uh, and then the tents of the campers and the camping vehicles. People literally were being washed downstream trying to escape from these things.
This episode is brought to you by Mulaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike. And how much time do you think that the campers, kids, as they're getting washed away, when does the current slow down, or is it one of those things that just goes for?
It raged for hours, probably for most of the day. The area that I was in, you'll see a video where I'm flying my helicopter over Hamilton Creek, and this was 12 hours after the height of the water flow, and it's violent even at that point. And anybody even nearby was caught up in it and washed downstream.
You've now experienced this twice in less than a year. When was Helene? Was last summer? Was it a year ago? September.
It was in November.
November. Okay. So it's within 8 months you've experienced two of these. How do they compare to each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kurville is terrible as it is. It affected a river that was, maybe a mile wide at its crest for about 50 miles. In North Carolina, it affected hundreds of thousands of people over an area that was probably 30 or 40 miles long and 30 miles wide. And of course, it was in the mountains with mountain streams, which made it even more difficult. So North Carolina was a Kurville on steroids. And when we were there, 100 helicopters, and it took every one of us to get done what needed to be done every day. I mean, I personally flew 7 hours a day, delivering supplies and medicine, and then loading the helicopter up with wounded and bringing them back, putting them in triage, getting them to hospitals where they were needed every day, all day. 100 of us doing it. It was a massive effort, and only helicopters could do it because there's no place to land an airplane, and the bridges were washed out, so cars couldn't get there. So it was the only lifeline. And what was neat about that was these are private helicopters, just good men and women that were willing to take their time and their equipment and go there and put it to use. There was a large Army base there in North Carolina that was not very far away with a fleet of helicopters, and they sent one. And of course, this was during the Biden administration. And in fact, the whole thing, the whole operation was a thing of beauty. Private individuals and people in the community volunteering, and food and water was donated. Elon Musk donated all the satellite
Starlink.
Yeah, Starlinks. And my job, I was flying with the state fire commissioner, and we were taking Starlinks to every fire station that was located in these communities that had been cut off. So people were actually able to come to the fire station and let their families know that they were still alive. It was an amazing thing. And then late in the week, the government showed up, FEMA, and confiscated the Starlinks we were taking out, confiscated all the food and water that had been donated by private individuals, and then began to divvy it out. We were literally begging for stuff that didn't belong to them to be able to get it out to the people in need. And they just stifled. Now, why would they do that? The answer is they had no resources. FEMA had no resources. So by confiscating everything and then handing it out, it gave people the impression they were doing something. And again, it was typical of the Biden administration and the way they treat people. Total disregard, bureaucratic nonsense, control. And Trump now in Kurville has demonstrated how an entrepreneur would run things. Kristi Noem was there immediately. A number of federal officials were there. They had military helicopters there, had 11 of them, which wasn't enough, but it was a lot more than what happened in North Carolina. And people were being rescued. Some of these military helicopters, one helicopter alone saved 150 people. They just did amazing work, and it was really done very, very well. My only complaint is they wouldn't allow private helicopters in. My group, which is trained to do this, could have added 50 helicopters in day one. We could have saved more people than 11 helicopters trying to cover 50 miles. So, and I've spoken to the authorities. In fact, I was on the phone to my state rep. He heard me say this on Maria Z, who you're familiar with.
Yeah.
One of his constituents called him last night, said, "You need to watch this." And I'm friends with him. He called me. He said, "Why didn't you call me?" Of course, I'm trying to call the governor, not a state rep. And he said, "I'm meeting with the emergency coordinator, and we're going to get this private helicopter group that does this on the short list of who we call whenever these things happen." So anyway, I've been working through that. That's my only complaint. But otherwise, it was a thing of beauty. You have thousands of volunteers on the ground in Kurville, and they have a terrible job. They're waist deep in mud. The bodies are caught in the debris along 55 miles of river, and you have to dig through the debris with your hands looking for clothing or people. It's hot here in Texas. It's a miserable job. Thousands of people are there, volunteer doing it. The National Guard's in force. So I'm really proud of the human effort to just step up and do what's necessary. We're seeing that in action.
I was in West Jefferson, North Carolina a couple of weeks ago, and then I drove through Boone en route to Asheville and to Johnson City, Tennessee, all in that same trip. And my friend that lives in West Jefferson was explaining to me how the houses that were alongside the river, the trees were coming out like missiles, like shooting out like missiles and just smashing these homes on the
Yeah.
river. And he had said, he goes, if you come here in the winter when the leaves are all off, you'll see how many trees are broken down, have been snapped in half from the hurricane. And even driving through West Jefferson to Boone to Asheville, there's parts of the interstate that you have to go around because it was destroyed. And then I was down in Asheville, and as you know, that area just got hammered. I saw these buildings that look like they've been desolated, almost like Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from, where they've been abandoned for years. And somebody was explaining to me that it was because of the hurricane damage. And there were parts of this bike path I was, I like to run, and I was running alongside the river, and part of the bike trail went underneath the bridge. Well, that got completely wiped out from it. And even to the point where I was talking to a guy, and we were probably, 8-10 feet above the water on the bike path. And I said, if we were standing right here when the hurricane came through, what would happen? He said, your feet would be in the water. I go, just my feet? He goes, no, you would have completely drowned. And sometimes you can watch stuff on the internet all day, but when you're down, when you kind of get your eyes on it and get a perspective, I was just like, oh my God, like the area's been ravaged. So then all of a sudden this happens in Kurville, and, kids are sleeping, and next thing you know, they wake up and they're fighting for their lives on the water. It's unbelievable.
It's extraordinary. One of the things I remember in North Carolina, and by the way, I flew over every city you just named, all those rivers and areas. The forests there on the mountainside are just thick, and they're massive trees, and they have been mowed down like matchsticks. And think about this: how could a hurricane that has traveled over 600 or 700 miles of land do that to a forest? There's something else going on, and we know now that there's weather wars. Our government has control over the weather, and that's not a theory anymore. They publish it, they talk about it, and it was certainly in place there. I've looked at the evidence of it. We see the electromagnetism that was targeted in that area. It was a violent act perpetrated by people who had an agenda. And you can call me a conspiracy theorist, but you need to. I bet your audience is fully on board with that. So it's safe to say here, but those that may not be, it's a real deal. Our government has patents, an arm length of patents on how to control weather, and so you ask, is that what happened in Kurville? And I've been thinking about it all weekend. They had the means. They had the opportunity, but did they have the motive? Initially I thought, no, this doesn't really look like this looks like one of those odd events that happens in nature, right? But now I've seen the government record of cloud seeding that's occurred. They have been seeding the clouds in that area on a heavy basis, and it's public record. Campers were complaining about the blue rain. Rain was falling the day or two before, and it was caught in tents and things like that. It was blue, and that's evidence of cloud seeding or weather manipulation. I'm afraid I'm leaning towards this was a deliberate act now. There's certainly enough evidence of it, and like I mentioned, a 1,000-year event. Nah, it sounds to me like it was designed, and so I'd encourage your listeners to start. If they're not already familiar with weather wars and with chemtrails. Chemtrails now have been acknowledged and funded in the government. Biden signed some authorization for funding. Gates is now known for creating technology to it's called dim the sun. There's a really great documentary by Dean Wigington called The Dimming. And it between North Carolina and now this, and then you have the fires in Los Angeles, and you have the Maui event. It really looks like they're executing on their agenda. They want fewer of us. I think the COVID crime, were, and they still want to today. They want to give our children the bioweapon they call the vax. So we need to wake up. And it's really hard to wrap your head around how evil these people in power are. It's such a degree of evil that those of us that are normal people, as a Christian, it's hard to believe that there are people that would want to kill children, but anybody that today that is promoting the vaccination of children with the COVID vaccine, which by the way doesn't work and isn't safe, right? We know that, and they're still pushing it. Doctors, pediatricians, pediatric associations, these are just damned evil people at this point.
And people are still getting them, Gary. That's what's amazing to me. People are still getting these things.
Einstein said there's only two things that are infinite. He said the universe and human stupidity. And then he said, but I have my doubts about the universe. Yeah, people need to be responsible. They need to own their own critical thinking. They need to look at evidence, and they need to escape things like normalcy bias and confirmation bias. And it's funny. I've always been somebody who thinks differently. I was a kid who asked too many questions, right? But that kid built the largest fitness franchise in the world because I thought differently than everybody else. And I encourage people, have the courage to think on your own, to do your own research. The media is constantly lying to you because it's controlled by people who have an agenda, and they propagandize everything. Which, by the way, Michael, that's why I support people like you, because you among the alternate media are our sources for truth and for thinking. And if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't know about the dangers of COVID, the COVID vax, and we wouldn't know about weather wars and all these things that are real threats to us and our children.
Why Kurville then? Why Western North Carolina? What do you think was the agenda behind those two areas?
Well, it's funny. As I was saying, the reason I was on the fence about it, because even though I had the means and the opportunity, what was the motive? And in Kurville, I'm not sure that there's no military installations there. There's certainly a lot of Trump voters, much like there was in that part of North Carolina. North Carolina's probably easier. That was the part of North Carolina that was going to get Trump elected. They were all there in the mountains. Not Asheville, by the way. That's a liberal.
That's a hippie. There was more panhandling and homeless and tweakers. I mean, it felt like in Arizona where I'm at. I mean, there's so many homeless, even in my neighborhood. I mean, it's unbelievable. Sorry, I got there. I got to Asheville, and that was my first time I'd ever been there, and I thought it was a really cool town. But somebody's like, would you live there? I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, my next move, I'm getting away from homeless. And there were so many of them just walking around. So sorry. Cut you off.
Anytime you see a Democrat Mecca, you see homeless, they're giving away tax dollars to buy the votes of people. So people come to be bought and live on the street and so forth. But the mountains of North Carolina is 90% Republican, and Asheville was I guess to them a necessary sacrifice to knock these. And remember, this was right near the election, so there was no way for these people to vote. And North Carolina was very, very close, and Trump needed North Carolina. So that motive I can get. Kurville, not so much. But they do have an agenda to achieve a sustainable population, which means fewer of us. So it certainly checked that box.
And that was the thing too. It's this one friend of mine. He's become a very good friend, listener of my show in North Carolina. He was explaining to me, and I witnessed it. Like the people in Appalachia, Appalachia, they don't want the government helping them at all, and they don't wait around for anything. Like they'll cut the trees off, they'll chop them off and get them off the road themselves. They're very resourceful, and I could see why the government wouldn't want that. They don't want that mindset.
Well, that's true too, because the only reason I think our country still exists is because we have 600 million weapons, and a whole bunch of us that know how to use them. So they need to get people like us out of the way if they want us to roll over and be told what to do. Now, they've been very successful in California, New York, Illinois, Washington, Oregon. But Texas, where I live, they're going to have the work cut out for them. And so many people that are like-minded, like you and me, are moving to Texas. I was talking to Maria Z yesterday. I thought she was still in Australia. She says, "No, I'm in Texas." I said, "Well, that was smart." This is the place to be for people that believe in self-sufficiency and freedom.
Well, and there's also, I mean, and I'm sure you probably know her, Mary Talley Bowden has been on my show a bunch of times.
Oh, love her.
I mean, what that woman's been through. I mean, I was so glad that she was on not only Tucker, and then also Joe Rogan, and she's unbelievable.
She's an American hero. I'm pretty involved in politics here, and I used to be friends with Governor Abbott when he let them inject 5 to 11-year-olds with this bioweapon. I really backed away from him. I was so disgusted. In fact, I told him, Governor, if you let them vax our kids with this COVID bioweapon, you're going to be among those few who know the price of your soul. My wife was listening to that conversation. When I hung up, she said, "Do you realize what you just told the governor?" And I said, "You bet I did." And even the lieutenant governor, I told him something similar. And he agreed to fight for medical freedom, which was that we should have the right to take, the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and things like that. And then he betrayed me. He didn't follow through. And I don't know what their motive is. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's donations. Big Pharma's, Big Pharma donates $2 billion a cycle to Washington politics. So almost all of them are bought and paid for. My friend Ken Paxton, who is the current Attorney General, is now running for Senate against John Cornyn. And Ken, and he credits me with part of this, filed the first lawsuit against Pfizer as a state attorney general. And in fact, 3 weeks later, he was impeached. And he credits me with that too. But anyway, he won the trial in the Senate, and now he's running for Senate against John Cornyn, who's a bought and paid for establishment politician that would send our kids to Ukraine and all the other crap that goes with these people. So hopefully we can get Ken elected because he's a real deal, and he's proven it over and over again, especially when he filed the lawsuit for fraud against Pfizer.
Yeah, Brooke Jackson I've had on here too, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with her.
Who was it?
Brooke Jackson?
No, I'm not sure.
The Pfizer lawsuit, Robert Barnes is her attorney.
Okay.
She was part of
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah.
She lives in Texas too. And then Lynn Finn is a friend of mine who's also she was just featured on Epic Times. She lives, she might be in Texas. But all these medical freedom doctors that, were standing up when nobody was willing to stand up for it. So.
Yeah, they're heroes. McCullough, I mean, what he's paid, the price he's paid. Even Joe McCullough, who's my friend, he was the number one censored person in America because he stood up and said, "This is bad medicine." Jesus said we stood up and did the right thing. We were persecuted, and I'm persecuted. When I flew the January 6 heroes, who've been released in the middle of the night in my aircraft because they were Bureau of Prisons had put these January 6 prisoners in federal prisons, some of them 2,000 miles from their families, and that was by design. They wanted to separate them from their families. That's our federal government under Biden. So I activated my friends with jet aircraft, and we met them and got them home, and in the middle of the night, cold. It was a terrible thing. Um, uh, People on Facebook commented that they hoped my plane would go down. So anyway, persecution is a badge of honor. If you're not taking heat, you're not in the kitchen. And so I bet you get a little bit of bad commentary occasionally, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. But you know what? I'm not smart about it. I respond, and I'm getting better about just blocking them, because what's the point?
Yeah.
They're trolls and they're looking for a reaction, and I know better. But sometimes my emotions do get the best of me, and I do draft up a response. But which I'm working on it, Gary.
Let me tell you one last story about what happened. So when I was in Marble Falls this weekend flying search and rescue, a family had the car washed off the road, and the 17-year-old daughter was washed downstream. The other family members made it out, and so the next day, I took the father and the younger brother of the 17-year-old girl, and we were flying the creek low and slow in a helicopter, looking for her. You're praying she's alive on top of a tree, but this is 24 hours later. You're possibly looking for her body. Just to have that man sitting behind me, with the courage to be there, looking down on the water, and his son. First of all, it was an honor for me to be able to do that for the family, but it was a really, it was tough. We spent an hour going slowly back and forth over about 10 miles of the creek where she might be, and then yesterday afternoon they found her body. So you have, and I know Kurville has hundreds of cases like that. This is a terrible event. We all should be praying for the families. It's hard to come up with any reason why these things happen, but they do. And so I encourage your audience to pray for these families. And there's many bodies in the water right now that we need to find so that they can have some kind of closure. And that's the stage we're at right now. Rescue happens the first day or two, then you go to recovery, and that's what's going on now. So hopefully we can find them all and get closure to the families and get this behind us. Terrible thing.
I know we're running out of time here, but one question I do want to ask you in regards to that: how were some of these kids able to survive it in the camp with being in those cabins?
They found a lot of kids in the top of trees. They were being washed downstream in this violent current, grabbing onto trees, grabbing onto things that float. And there were so many miracles that happened in the midst of all this. One of the videos I'm gonna send you shows you the violence of the water, and you can imagine a child trying to survive in the midst of that.
And how old were the kids? What was the range of them?
At Camp Mystic, they were 9 and 10 years old.
And some of them were able to grab onto trees and
yeah. And some were able to run and get up the side of the riverbank in time. The rough numbers I have, there were 75 girls there, and 27 are confirmed dead, and another 2 are missing. The person who runs the camp was also lost, and I understand he was lost trying to save his girls.
And at this point, I mean, anybody missing, the likelihood they're going to be alive is next to 0%.
Yeah, I've done a lot of this with Haiti, all my trips to Haiti and other places. After 48 hours, you pretty much go from rescue to recovery.
How hard is it for you? This was not your first time doing it. You did Western North Carolina at the end of last year. You've mentioned Haiti. What level of mental challenge is it for you to continue to do this?
It's intense. It's a call of duty. I have the skill sets. I've been a pilot for 49 years. I have just flown around the world multiple times in my helicopter, in a variety of situations and rescue. Hurricane Harvey here in Houston is another example. So when you have the skill set and you have the resources, the equipment, and you have an opportunity to serve, you do it. And when you're in the midst of it, I mean, you're flying a helicopter 20 feet off a raging river, between two cliffs on either side of you. If you lose an engine in a helicopter, there's no recovery. A helicopter, you need to be 500 feet above the ground, going as fast as minimum 60 knots to be able to auto rotate to the ground. So you're completely dependent on that engine turning, and this is for hours. And as you move along, looking for survivors. So it's intense, and it's also the most gratifying thing you can possibly do, knowing that very few people have the skill set to be there in that situation, and the only reward is knowing that you're helping and being useful. And I sold my company 13 years ago, so I get to go whenever duty calls. And it's a great honor for me, and honestly, I get more out of it personally than I put in it. I say that joy is a byproduct of the good you do for others. So you have a sense of joy in the midst of this terrible situation because you're there making a difference.
Where can people find you, Gary? Anything you want to plug? Anything?
No, there's going to be some organizations to donate to. I haven't had time to research them yet, but I tell people don't donate to just any organization. When these things happen, unfortunately, people take advantage of it. So be careful. Don't give out of emotion. Maybe wait a moment until definitely do not give to the Red Cross.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that.
I have worked beside the Red Cross in Haiti and other places. Horrible organization. Resources never show up. The only thing they seem to be good at is raising money. Never ends up to help people. And I've been on the front lines where they were worthless over and over and over. But there are going to be good ones that rise up. And when I do my research and I discover who they are, I'll send you the information, and you can recommend that because I know people want to give. They want to do something right now, but don't do it too soon. The need will still be there in a week, but we'll know more about who's really meeting the need rather than maybe taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, it was my mini conversations with Michael Yan where, I realized who Red Cross was, especially, in regards to the Darien Gap and, the resource they were providing for these illegals that just come right through. And it's like, again, it comes back to what we talked about offline about COVID. You realize the whole system has lied to you for so long. And the Red Cross, you couldn't imagine an organization like this would do things to harm Americans. And I don't trust any of it anymore, Gary, so...
Well, another one is the American Cancer Society, and it's actually well named because they promote more poor cancer treatments than any organization. They do nothing to promote alternative therapies. It's all about poison, cut and burn, which is the medical model for cancer. And that's what the American Cancer Society does. And then there's the Susan G. Komen Foundation for Breast Cancer. Well, they donate money to Planned Parenthood, and abortion is a leading cause of breast cancer later in life. So all of these moneyed institutions that we normally should have some kind of faith in, man, everybody's got to think twice and do the research. I'll probably get some hate comments on that one, by the way.
But the government cares about you, Gary, right? I mean, that's what it cares about you.
Yeah, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the whole abortion, the government cares about you. That's why they want to help you get abortions. People really believe that, though. That to me, I know we're wrapping up here, but that to me is like, did anyone learn anything from COVID? And I hate to say it, but majority of them, no. And I think, I'll just end with this and get your thoughts, but people wouldn't fall for COVID again, but I think people would willingly lock down in the right situation.
It's amazing. So I'll give you another quote. John Wayne said, "Life is hard, especially if you're stupid."
But you know what I say to that? It can be hard if you're not that I'm that smart, but like because you literally look at people and you just nod your head, you shake your head. I mean, people with fancy degrees have all the success, and they can't see it. Like I'm like, you're way smarter than me. How is it I see this? And you don't. People lining up around a building to get a shot, like winning concert tickets, all over the world.
And if you get the shot, you get a
donut or car wash or
that's what I was thinking. If you get a donut, I don't know, but thank God there's people waking up. People who listen to you are probably almost in agreement with us, because they're wanting to know the truth. They're willing to think about things. And that's why you and I are having this conversation. We know that there are people that want to have the best information so that they can make their own decisions.
Gary, I always appreciate you making time for me. We got to make that conversation with you and Paul Craig Roberts. I'm looking forward to that. And, thanks again.
Okay. Enjoyed our conversation, Michael. See you.
Mic drop.